When I'm not fighting and losing the battle of my students' musical influences to their parents. Alright, what did you have to say about Jimi Hendrix, Jack?
He's not good. Van Halen's way better than him. Even though
what?
Even though...
I thought you said you researched this.
Oh, I did. So, even though he was like the first one to start playing.
Jimi Hendrix was the first one to play an electric guitar?
Yeah, he was like kind of. Like he was like the first one to like play it. And everybody thought it was cool, but then Van Halen came and started shredding.
Yeah, and then what happened to Jimmy?
He died.
Yeah, well...
And now nobody's good, except for Van Halen.
I like to answer questions I get on YouTube, so let's get to it. What about your favorite Yardbirds guitarist? Clapton, Beck, or Page? So I think a lot of you who know me probably know that it is Jimmy Page, without a doubt. But I do have some interesting thoughts on Eric Clapton that I would like to hear you guys' opinions on, because I feel... my generation didn't totally understand the Clapton thing, like maybe people in their 40s or beyond do, because I know like a lot of like people, like my friends who are like a little bit older, they all swear and like worship at the altar of Clapton, and I think he's a pretty amazing guitar player with some of the best tone I've ever heard, but as like a writer, with exceptions, he's a great guitar player. I never really totally put him in the pantheon with like Page and Hendrix and those guys. And again, I don't want to say that like I'm hating on Clapton or anything, because the dude's obviously amazing. But I wonder if some of it was actually kind of cultural for maybe just being there when he was just kind of like widely renowned as like the guy. So again, I'm a Clapton fan. I think my favorite Clapton thing is actually the unplugged Layla version, which is an absolute masterpiece in arranging for acoustic guitar and soloing on acoustic guitar. But other than that, I haven't really gotten too far into Clapton. Maybe I'm just missing out on something, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Kind of the same deal with Jeff Beck to me. Like, tone is incredible. I've actually seen him before. He's just an amazing player. As far as like the writing and the stuff that speaks to me, I always just kind of gravitate towards my man Jimmy Page. I'm a concert and jazz pianist, and I can tell you that nobody remotely musically artistic will think much of someone pretending. I don't watch this channel. Obviously not, or else you know that you just made this channel. But even if he is a pianist, he doesn't actually know anything. After all the work that I've done to learn, I can't respect someone trying to act sophisticated, as if that's what everyone wants to do. Please just admit, I don't play a musical instrument. You guessed it, a fantastic, salty, elitist piano player comment of the week. Really, I've gotten far less of these than I actually anticipated as the life of these go on, but I'm definitely open to getting more, and you'll keep seeing them in the future, so keep them coming. Hi Sean, enjoying the content? My question regards how to add a bridge section to a song. I hear some tunes where it's used as a device for a key change or to indulge themselves, artistically. I write poems, some of which I turn into a song. The chorus and verses are okay, but I'm a bit puzzled as how the theory works for a bridge. I mean, do I still take chords from the scale and the key I'm playing, or is there something a bit more funky going on? I almost kind of have a bone to pick with bridges. I feel like the vast majority of bridges I hear in music are very forced sounding, and a lot of that is because I think it's like, oh, it's time to add something different to a song. Let's try a key change. Let's try something else. I think maybe some of the best bridges I've heard, and again, you can do this in a million different ways, but it's usually using a chord in the key that you're in that you haven't used yet. I think that's kind of like a common thing to do. Like, say maybe like the verses of something are like A minor, F, and G, right? And that's like the verse. And then maybe like the chorus is something like C, A minor, E, G. We've used pretty much all the chords there except for like a D minor. So it's like when it's time to go to bridge, D minor, you know, I don't know. So to me, a lot of time bridges are forced. Now, it is a good example of when you can kind of like flex some of your music theory on there, because some of the better bridges I've heard, maybe that's like a good time to go to like parallel minor or something like that. Like say you're in the key of C major, you go to like C minor and kind of just like throw everything, you know, on its side. But again, I do think that when you're thinking like that, it tends to kind of force something into a song that maybe you shouldn't totally go there. So in my own songs, I don't necessarily follow like a formula, like, oh, this needs a bridge. I'm more of a fan of breakdowns in songs, which I think you're kind of stripping back something musically instead of like just totally change it. Not to say that none of my songs have bridges or anything, but I think usually, as far as the theory goes, it's really just kind of like following your ear as far as like what might be like a refreshing way to kind of mix something up. But yeah, in my experience, what I've seen in a forced way is using the chord in the key that has not been used yet, or maybe using like a parallel minor thing, or using the circle of fifths to maybe go to like the next closest key. So like if you're in the key of C, maybe you want to borrow some chords from either the key of G or the key of F to do stuff. So that is one example of where music theory can help you write. But again, you want to follow your ear because, like I said over and over again, a lot of bridges seem forced. And I think that might be a byproduct of like, oh, there needs to be a bridge here. I'm going to use my music theory in a place where like I can just use it for the sake of using it. What's your opinion on Tool refusing to allow streaming services such as Spotify and Apple to allow people to cherry pick songs? I think their thinking is that the entire album should be played in its entirety. I mean, I get it. You know, people and artists kind of make an album as a collective and they want it to be listened to in its entirety. But at the same time, I'm not really all for it because I think it shows a disconnect between a band and their fans. Again, it's their art, it's their music, they can do whatever the heck they want. I'm not telling anybody what they should or should not be doing. But speaking from a fan, and I'm a huge Tool fan, that's just not how a lot of people listen to music anymore. Like I've bought all the Tool albums over the years, but taking a CD that I still own somewhere, finding some kind of like drive to get it onto my computer, to somehow transfer it into my iTunes library to get it onto my phone is just not something that people do anymore. And because of that, I just don't listen to Tool anymore. I would love to listen to Tool, but they're not on the streaming services. And I think they're kind of hurting themselves in just in a relevance type way. Not that Tool's irrelevant by any stretch of the imagination. So many people are so stoked for this new album that I will believe is coming out when I actually see it. But I just think it's kind of a disconnect. Like, just put stuff on Spotify and iTunes. You're going to make some money off of it. Everybody wants it. That's just how people kind of consume music. So to think that you're just like fighting for some, you know, trying to control the medium in which your music is listened to, I think is kind of just a short-sighted thing where like you're only really hurting your own fans. So again, whatever they want to do, that's cool. I'm not going to hate on them for it, but I for one would love to have Tool on Spotify so I could actually listen to them again, just because that's just the nature of how we listen to music. Most people do. Like most people can't even like play a CD in their cars anymore. So I don't know, this is what I think. A greasy PewDiePie with knowledge from God. That's pretty good. I don't even know if that's like a salty comment or not, so I didn't even read that in the Salty Blues voice, but yeah, I guess I'll go with that. I'm hearing a bit of Jimmy's Foxy Lady in there, which is the only way to go, of course. What are things you draw inspiration from for guitar? I've heard from guitarists drawing inspiration from other instruments like saxophone or drums, which can give them interesting melodies or rhythms. Definitely, I think picking up another instrument, even if you are not good at it and just trying to make something sound good, is a huge inspiration because it kind of gets you out of maybe, you know, the process that you're used to on your main instrument. So I like to write on different instruments besides guitar, especially playing to some kind of track, even if it's not like a backing track, some kind of loop. I think some of my better songs that I'm happier with have come from just like looping something atmospheric and then just kind of getting down on that. But also too, I mean, inspiration comes from so many different places. I know for a fact, a lot of times when I go see a band live, whether it's like a huge band in a concert or just something locally, just kind of seeing live music is something that really inspires me to go home and write rather than just going, like, I feel like I play a lot, but as far as like sitting down and playing with the emphasis being on writing, I'm almost always mostly inspired by seeing live stuff, whether it's even good or bad. Because if it's good, it's like, man, I want to like, you know, be part of this. If it sucks, it's like, man, I want to show these guys up, you know? So really, if seeing live music isn't something that you do, force yourself to go do it. Because I remember there was like a long stretch of time where I just didn't really see a lot of live music. And I think that kind of coincided with like me not writing a lot on guitar. So once I started making an effort to get out there more, I feel like my writing improved. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. But I think it's definitely something that everybody should explore. Hendrix is the right answer. Well done, sir. Sort of embarrassing, not related question. As a beginner guitar player who really wants to get into playing on an electric guitar, I find it extremely intimidating to walk into Guitar Center to mess around on something without feeling judged. Long lead up short. Any recommendations for anything easy I can learn to not completely blow my cover as a complete novice? Or should I just get over myself and act like an adult about my developing guitar skills? Thanks again for all your lessons and advice. First of all, screw the people who work at Guitar Center. As a former proud Guitar Center employee, for the most part, they really don't care. They're so numb to everything around them, and their ears have just become so desensitized to absolutely everything. Just go in and play what you want to play. But I do get it. It's super intimidating. I remember being incredibly intimidated, and I think the worst thing that you can do is try to riff out on popular riffs, because you're just kind of setting yourself up for failure in that instance. I think the only times as a Guitar Center employee when like maybe me and like a coworker would look at each other was when like a riff was just being absolutely mangled incredibly loudly. That, other than that, it's like pretty much anything goes. Now, something that would be appreciated is really just kind of like picking chords out, especially like with a delay pedal. If someone just came in and played like a C major 7 chord, like to like maybe like a G, you know, any kind of, just picking through chords, we would all just be like so grateful. Like it would be like the most amazing thing, because that's not something that anybody does, which I think is a good way to kind of like settle your nerves, because again, I remember being there. I totally get it. Super intimidating, you know, just being able to plug into something, especially if it's an electric with like an amp and stuff like that. You want to like play something that you know, but you almost feel like you're putting on a performance when you're there. So I think that's why just picking through extended 7th chords is great, because it almost makes you slow down. And it's such a different vibe that it gives off, especially even just like playing major 7 chords. Again, as you know, huge proponent of major 7 chords. I think it's probably subconsciously because when I learned them and I went into like a guitar shop, this is before I even like worked at Guitar Center, people would be like, wow, what is that? The only compliments I ever got was when I was just kind of mindlessly playing major 7 chords. They were like, is that an old standard? Because I think people who don't really realize, like think it's like something like just really kind of fancy. So chord voicings over riffs if you are intimidated, but bottom line is just try not to be intimidated. I was recently watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and was blown away by how good the Morricone soundtrack is. God, I suck so bad at pronouncing names. The main theme is a stone cold classic and finds a perfect use for the relatively nascent electric guitar. Sadly, I think the guitar is a criminally underutilized instrument in film scores. My question, in a soundscape dominated by orchestras and synths, what are some of your favorite guitar soundtrack moments? I agree 100%. There is not enough great guitar soundtracks for movies. Now, video games, I think we actually have a little bit more to choose from, which can be just as cinematic, if not more so. But, and again, I'm kind of like disqualifying like Miss Misery by Elliott Smith from like Good Will Hunting. It doesn't really count. Or even, you know, like the Tenacious D Pick of Destiny soundtrack, which is pretty awesome. Master Exploder, for sure. Shout out to that song, it's fantastic. More just kind of instrumental stuff, which like the soundtrack from Desperado, I always thought was pretty cool. That got me into like Gypsy Kings style type stuff. I thought it was really fantastic. There's some good Zelda stuff, like the Gerudo Valley stuff has some guitar in it. It's pretty awesome. I think, not that it's totally guitar dominant, but string instrument like charango, I think Ron Rocco, I forget the name of the actual charango instrument that they use, but in the video game Last of Us, that is an awesome minimalist stringed acoustic instrument style soundtrack that you should all check out if you haven't checked that out. That's pretty great. I do remember just last week, one of my students saw the movie Coco, which is kind of like a Latin American-based Pixar movie, and they wanted to learn the song from the lullaby of Remember Me, and I was like, okay, whatever. So I just brought it up on Spotify, and I'm not even gonna front, like I'm not gonna be a tough guy. Like that song is absolutely beautiful. It's like 1 minute long, and it got me right here. Awesome arranged guitar song with words and stuff too. But yeah, criminally underrated. I can't even like think off the top of my head of other great acoustic guitar or electric guitar soundtracks. So please hit us up in the comments to tell us some of your favorite guitar work. So for listening homework, I'm actually going to throw you to an acoustic arrangement of that song from Coco that I was telling you about by YouTube original gangster Sungha Jung, which I think I'm pronounced that right. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce anything. I'm awful with that. But guy's an absolute beast. If you've never checked his stuff out, his fingerstyle arrangements are on point every single time. This is absolutely no exception. And make sure to sign up for the Blues Letter, because that's going out on the 1st of next month, which you're not going to want to miss that. I'll link you to that below. And any questions or comments that you have, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, the website. I'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks a lot.